Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth.
I'm going to go ahead and just speak some truths, if you don't mind. Because my understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly. And you're thinking about sitting out? And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that. Because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. And so now you're thinking about sitting out or even supporting somebody who has a history of denigrating you because you think that's a sign of strength, because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable. This shouldn't even be a question.
This whiny, finger-wagging lecture from Obama sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Gee, where have we heard something like this before?
I will say, you know, a lot of black men sometimes feel like they're ignored or they're put down, particularly sometimes even by black women in the media. So this is not that. But I do hear Roland's point that felt ignored. But you feel ignored, and then you go over to the other side. The oppressed feel oppressed, so then you go and try to align with the oppressor. So I'm not putting black men down, but sometimes it's like, well, some of you Kevin Samuels following Tariq Nasheed quoting people, please look at the truth and see what's happening and get in line with some of the black women. Is majority, like he said, vote Democrat, but that margin of people who can be plucked away from your people and go advance policies that harm your people, I just don't understand that.
You know, it doesn't surprise me at all that Tiffany Cross doesn't get it. As a wise man once said, it's impossible to get someone to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it. As I said before about Magic Johnson's little tirade, you're probably wondering, who are these whiny temper tantrums against black men supposed to be appealing to? Who is this meant to get? Who is this meant to reach? Certainly not black men. This is guaranteed to repel what few black men were silly enough to still be listening at this late date. So who's the real audience for these diatribes? The white donor class, that's who. People who love seeing someone griping at black men, getting black men told. Show me some bootlicking Negro who's whining at black men, and I'll show you someone who's either on the white payroll or desperately hoping to get on it. Barack Obama is a multimillionaire now. But it wasn't black people who lined his pockets with those tens of millions of dollars. It was white power who did it. So that's the audience he's playing to, same as always. But this is the Democratic Party platform laid bare. Scolding black men, insulting black men, talking to us like we're disobedient children, like apparently they're going to be scolding some unruly kids, all because we demand that our interests be catered to like everybody else. Either that or we set out the election, which is what an intelligent constituency does. But here they are with the abuse. Here they are with the insults. They don't do this with any other group. You have never seen Obama or any other Democrat or Republican for that matter wagging their finger at anyone. They don't do this to anybody else. Neither party does. They don't do it with Asian men, Jewish men, Hispanic men, white women, black women, LGBT, or whomever. Everybody else, they talk to them respectfully. Oh, what can we do for you? What seems to be the problem? But they come up to black men and they think that there's some sort of parent scolding some child. But as I've always told you, show me somebody who's showing you some anger, and that's somebody who's trying to mask their fear, because that's what most manifestations of anger are. They're meant to mask fear. And what is it that Obama and the rest of these Democrats are scared of? Apparently they think that black men pose a unique threat to the status quo. And they're right. But make no mistake, no matter how Barack Obama tries to frame this, he's actually speaking directly to the black media. He's complaining about us by proxy. He's pretending that he's railing against black men. He's wagging his finger at black men in general. But who he's really whining about is us. Well, allow me to give the rebuttal to your talking points, Barry. First of all, you have never spoken the truth a day in your life. You have lied every day of your adult life. Nobody believes a word that comes off your forked tongue. You've always said whatever you thought the person standing in front of you wanted to hear. Unless it was a black person, then all you did was finger wag and lecture us. It took black people a little while to accept what a snake in the grass you are. But when they did figure it out, nobody's going to tell us that you're not a liar anymore.
When we get in trouble, and the system's not working for us.
When we get in trouble, and the system isn't working for us, he said. First of all, what's this us crap, Tether? You have nothing in common with us. Barack Obama's trying to bestow black credibility on himself. When the system's not working for us, and that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. Brothers? I don't have any Tethers in my family tree, and I don't call any bootlick my brother. He's trying to bestow black credibility on himself and it don't work. And when he tries to pretend like he's talking like a black person, it just sounds so phony and fake and fraudulent from him because it is. Barack Obama is just like every clueless white bigot you ever heard because he is one. He has the mentality of a white racist. That's why he's so comfortable talking down to black people, black men in particular. You know, when we get in trouble, Kamala Harris was the one putting us in trouble in California. And when he talks about the system not working for us, I assume he's talking about incidents like Matrice Richardson, who was murdered, and Kamala Harris was Attorney General of California at the time and she did absolutely nothing about it. There's an example of the system not working for us. Or perhaps Barack Obama's referring to when Kamala Harris prosecuted Jamal Truelove, a black man who was framed by the police using some phony eyewitness, somebody who had identified a totally different person, by the way, but Kamala Harris decided to prosecute Mr. Truelove regardless. He was convicted, of course, because he's black, and he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He would wind up spending 6 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit before his appeals were finally successful. He should never have been prosecuted in the first place, much less locked up, but Kamala Harris didn't care. He was black. That's all that mattered. Or maybe Barack Obama is talking about how, as Attorney General of California, Kamala Harris deliberately used her office to prevent state prisoners from being freed because she wanted them to be forced into labor fighting wildfires. Her office did that when she was Attorney General. Now, she claimed that she didn't know what happened in that case, but that she would look into it. That was 10 years ago when she promised to look into what her office had been doing. 10 years ago. And that was also the last time we ever heard her talk about it, too. She wants people to believe that she can run the country when she can't even run a prosecutor's office. That is, if we're stupid enough to believe she's telling the truth. Or perhaps he's referring to how when Kamala Harris was DA of San Francisco, she locked up over 1,900 people for marijuana offenses, a disproportionate number of whom were black. Everyone knows that when it comes to marijuana, the police routinely ignore white drug addicts who have weed, while at the same time harassing, illegally searching, and often planting marijuana on black citizens. That's what Kamala Harris was doing, and of course she weaponized her office to target black mothers if their children miss school. So when cops murder black people, Kamala can't really do anything about it, but let a black child miss school, and she's all over that. I could go on, but I think the point is made. So when Obama talks about when the system isn't working for us, I assume he means all the examples that I just cited, right? Because that's what Kamala Harris, because Kamala was the one in charge of it. But then again, when Obama was president, how often did the system work for us then? We're not supporting Kamala Harris because we know her very well. And the real Kamala Harris is nothing like the phony, vague, nondescript list of platitudes that President Empty Suit was listing. This is a woman who we know from experience to be a liar. Kamala Harris is not one of us. She didn't grow up like us, didn't grow up with us. She grew up with her Indian family, and she didn't go to school with us. Just like you didn't, Barry. She went to school in Canada. This is Obama trying to dictate to us what we believe, what we remember. He figures if he just says it, nobody's going to question it. Little does he know that no black people with any sense believe anything that comes off his forked tongue.
When you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain.
And no, Kamala Harris doesn't understand our struggles or our pain because she was the one we were struggling against. She was the one inflicting pain on the black community. Now, she wasn't the DA of San Francisco when Oscar Grant was murdered, but she also gave no response to the clear police violence that was going on. She did nothing about it. In fact, she historically always took the police's side. Why? Because she wanted the police union's support for when she ran for higher office. And when she became the Attorney General of California, what did she do? She lied and she claimed that she was going to investigate the murder of Matrice Richardson, which she almost immediately declared the police were not involved in. And when she was ready to run for the Senate, she suddenly decided that maybe the Matrice Richardson case should be reopened. But as soon as she won her Senate race, she immediately declared it closed again. So, nothing to see here again. That's tormenting the family of that woman. That's inflicting pain on them by pretending that she's actually going to do her job when she knew from the very beginning she was only using the murder of a dead black woman as a PR stunt. And no, she doesn't know what it means to overcome anything or to achieve anything, and she has never worked twice as hard for anything. Kamala Harris didn't get the political offices she got by working twice as hard. She got it by being the sexual plaything for low-down Willie Brown, and as a result, she's become a product of the California political machine. By being the open mistress of one of the dirtiest sellout politicians in America, that assured all the white powers that be in California that she was willing and obedient to white supremacy, which she was. Every job Kamala Harris has ever had to be given to her. I reposted a video essay last week, one that I had originally posted 5 years ago, about how Willie Brown gave his mistress Kamala Harris a BMW as a gift. And then he gave her appointments to not one but 2 state patronage jobs, one of which paid her $100,000 a year, even though she didn't bother to show up 20% of the time. This while she was allegedly working as a prosecutor. So it was basically money for nothing, and illegal money at that because it's against the law for her to have been on the California Unemployment Assurance Appeals Board. But she didn't get that job due to hard work or qualifications. She got that appointment because she was stumping the Speaker of the California Assembly. And then when Kamala ran for the DA's office, her boyfriend and his white power broker pals were putting their support behind her. When she ran for the Senate, they put their thumb on the scales and they told any would-be competitors, like the then mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, don't crowd Kamala. When she tried to run for the presidency 4 years ago, she had one of the worst campaigns in U.S. history. She dropped out without winning a single delegate. It was humiliating. She didn't work hard to become Biden's running mate. She was chosen for that. And the same goes for the presidential nomination. She only got that because the DNC leadership knew that if she had to go through an actual nomination process on the floor of the convention, there would not be unanimous anything for her because she's so blatantly unqualified. She has no charisma. Nobody wanted to get behind her. Hell, Gavin Newsom had more support. Even Obama himself didn't want to just hand Kamala the nomination. He wanted for there to be an actual convention vote. But as with everything else bootlicking Barry's ever done, he rolled over when told. So where's all this hard work that Obama was talking about she was doing? Forget about working twice as hard. I just want to see where Kamala Harris has ever worked, period. But then again, Obama, just like Kamala Harris, is a tether doing what tethers do. He's taking our story, our struggle, our history, our accomplishments, and he's trying to copy and paste his own face and Kamala Harris's faces on it. We are the only ones out here who have kept the fraud of Kamala Harris front and center in the minds of young black voters. This is why Obama's admitting that the black media has been effective. He's lashing out at us because his legacy is what we're rejecting. And if this clown can't appeal to black men, then that means he can't appeal to anyone. This is the Democrat strategy. Insult black men, lecture black men, try to find a way to harass us and harangue us and coerce us into submission. But it's not going to work. Talk about a failure to read the room, but then again, don't kid yourself. Every one of the people who were in that room were Democrat operatives, plants, and shills. I've told you about how that works. Whenever they have these little so-called town halls and get-togethers, they're not picking people off the streets. They're getting a whole bunch of people who are dyed-in-the-wool Democrat supporters. These are not undecided voters. These are loyal Democrat operatives, many of them campaign volunteers. That's who you're looking at, dyed-in-the-wool Democrat operatives, which is why none of them said anything. In fact, they chuckled right along with them. And for this clown to talk about someone who denigrates black men, Barack Obama spent his presidency insulting black men and just routinely coming out of left field with some insult. Whenever he talked about black men, he had nothing good to say. He's been the one denigrating us. He was insulting black men from day one while telling black men don't vote for Trump because Trump insults black men. How the hell does that work? I am not concerned about anyone's words, even Barack Obama's, though I am dang sure concerned with people's actions. Barack Obama was turbocharging the immigration process with all that DACA nonsense. Donald Trump was actually trying to do something about it. Kamala Harris is sitting there thinking that black people need to be locked up for marijuana. At least Donald Trump said, you know what, maybe we might want to cut back on that. So no, Barack Obama is no different than Donald Trump. It's a distinction without a difference. Except with Donald Trump, you know you're dealing with an open white supremacist, so you have no choice but to fight him. With Barack Obama, you sit on your hands and hope he'll do something. Well, we're not hoping for anything. Black men are sitting this one out.
And you're thinking about sitting out? And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that.
Well, Bootlick Berry, we've got a problem with you. That's the issue here. They're seeing black people saying, you know what? We're going to go ahead and think and act for ourselves in our own interest. Oh, yes, we got a problem with that. But that's who he's really mad at, the black media, because we're the ones who caused all this to happen. He figured that denigrating and insulting black men for all those years was some sort of victimless crime, that he had gotten away with it. And then in 2016, the bill came due. He was humiliated by those same black men that he had been insulting for so many years. What happened was black folks decided to sit that election out, and they allowed the guy who was running around saying that he wasn't even a U.S. citizen, they let that guy become his immediate successor. It was a repudiation of Barack Obama and all the garbage he had done. He was seeing his precious legacy going up in smoke, and he hates it. Barack Obama never got over that humiliation, by the way. No matter how brave a front he tries to put up and tries to act like, oh, well, you know, the voters have spoken, he was humiliated when Trump became president. Because he knew that that was a slap in the face to him personally, and I'm glad for it. Not that I'm a Trump supporter, I'm not. But Barack Obama needed to get checked, and he got checked. And now Obama's back. And he's angry that he has no influence. No influence with the very demographic that the white media convinced him he was the boss of. As I've always told you, white power can give you a platform, but it can't give you legitimacy, not even if you're president. Barack Obama's finding that out the hard way. And on a side note, you remember how he was saying that Kamala Harris has been putting policies in place to deal with the housing shortage and to deal with the out-of-control rents?
And is putting forward concrete proposals to directly address the things that are vital in our neighborhoods and our communities. From housing, making sure that we are dealing with prices that are too high and rents that are too high.
Well, don't look now, Bootlick Berry, but Kamala just dropped a video where she admits that she hasn't done anything.
I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Now, before we go any further, we all know that Kamala's done absolutely nothing about the housing crisis. That's why she's having to post a video lying and claiming that if she's made president, she'll finally get around to it. But that's obviously a lie. Remember how the white media's been talking nonstop about how Kamala is raising all these hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign cash, except they never tell you who these donors are. Well, I'll tell you who one of Kamala's biggest donors is. A billionaire investor named Jonathan Gray. This man has given Kamala over $400,000 in the month of July alone. And who is Jonathan Gray? He's the president and chief operating officer of Blackstone. Yeah, that Blackstone, America's largest landlord, a company that is literally buying up entire neighborhoods and then declaring that none of those houses is up for sale, that you can only rent them. Chances are very good that if you sold a house in the last 10 to 15 years, It was probably some investment firm like Blackstone that bought it. By the way, people frequently confuse Blackstone with BlackRock, which is another scummy investment firm that does the exact same thing. It's understandable why you would get the two confused. They're both vulture capitalist firms with almost the exact same name doing the exact same dirt. Oh, and while we're on the subject of BlackRock, one of BlackRock's top executives was also working as an advisor to Kamala Harris's campaign right up until a few weeks ago. Now, this BlackRock executive has since left to go back to BlackRock. Talk about a dog returning to its own vomit. So whether it's Blackstone or BlackRock, it doesn't matter. They're both the billionaire investment firms who are buying up America's homes. And they're also one of the prime drivers of the affordability crisis, which is actually a wealth redistribution scheme where the nation's wealth is confiscated from the working class and handed over to the investor class with the government's help. Because this certainly couldn't happen without the government doing it. This is one of the main forces behind why you can't buy a house and why rents are skyrocketing. And this is who Kamala Harris is taking money and advice from while she's telling you that she's going to do something about the problem that these billionaire firms created. But then again, when you listen to Kamala Harris's ad, did she actually say that she was going to take on Blackstone? No. Did she actually say, I'm going after these investment firms who are buying up entire neighborhoods, we're going to force them to divest? No. Did she even mention Blackstone or talk about their corporate practices or the market tampering that they're engaged in? No. She's in the pocket of these real estate and investment firms who are buying up entire neighborhoods. But Obama's lying to you and saying that she's going to do something about them. That's why she's been in the White House for the last 4 years and hasn't lifted a finger. Because these vulture capitalists are the very people who she's depending on to bankroll her presidential campaign. She's been in the tank for them from the jump. She's a liar, and not a very good one. So for those of you who suspected that Kamala Harris has been a tool of these investment banks for the longest time, well, now you got your answer. Kamala Harris is from California, which is ground zero for the affordability crisis. And what did she do about that when she was a prosecutor? The white left tries to point to the lawsuit against Countrywide, but when you actually look at the particulars on that one, you realize it was far more sizzle than steak. Did Kamala Harris ever use her prosecutorial powers to go after unscrupulous landlords? Did she push for laws to criminalize raising rents? You know, the same way that she pushed laws to criminalize truancy? Did she go after corporations buying up entire neighborhoods the same way that she went after black mothers whose kids miss school? Or did she say there's nothing to see here and just take their money? What's going on is Obama's lashing out on the behalf of all of these bootlicks and sellouts. He spent years lecturing black men, and now black men are front and center dismantling his so-called legacy and humiliating him again. You see, this wasn't supposed to happen. He's seen Kamala Harris's poll numbers. I told you last week that her internal polling numbers must really suck for her to be pulling stunts like this. It means no matter how rosy a picture the white media tries to paint, Kamala's in deep trouble, and she knows it. This clown Obama, he's so desperate to seem like he's some sort of leader to black America. But as I've always told you, white power can give you a platform, but it can't give you legitimacy. He put all his little political capital on the line 8 years ago when he said that, I consider it a personal insult. If you don't turn out for Hillary, you got to support my legacy. You got to protect my legacy. And then black people didn't turn out to vote. It was at that moment that bootlicking Barry found out that he wasn't nearly as influential as he thought he was. But they do know that they are determined to do nothing that black people are telling them to do. No matter how much they talk about democracy hangs in the balance, America is on the verge of becoming a fascist state. If that was the case, then they shouldn't be scolding black men at all. They should be coming to black men and say, let's make a deal. Whatever it is you're asking for, we're going to do it. But that's not what they're doing. This is the one solid, unchanging rule for both of the political parties. Do not ever address black people's interests, ever. Don't even mention it. They talk about black men, but they don't dare talk to those black men because they don't want people to hear what black men are saying. The black agenda is a death sentence for white supremacy, and the white media being the mouthpiece for white supremacy, it's an existential crisis for them too. You don't hear any of them say, hey, look at how crazy these black men's demands are. They don't do that. When it comes to white voters, Arab voters, Hispanic voters, Asian voters, they always address their interests. They always talk about their issues. But with black voters, they ignore it. That's how you know that there's a program at work here, because they only do this with us. Well, now they see that the black grassroots has a program of our own at work. They're already laying the groundwork for what the excuse is going to be when Kamala loses. And just like with Proposition 8, that gay marriage ban that passed in California, white liberals like Rachel Maddow were castigating black voters for not turning out to vote against it. That's what they're doing here. They're losing faith in their faux black puppet, and they're saying that if she loses, it's going to be black men's fault. And you know what I say to that? You're damn right. Family, and especially black men, don't you dare cower in fear whenever you got people sitting here going, well, if we lose, that's going to be because of you. Black people and black men in specific have been conditioned over the course of hundreds of years to be terrified of white disapproval, to the point that we won't even speak up for ourselves. If they sit here and tell you Kamala Harris's defeat is going to be on your head, good, you take credit for that. Because that is us. Nobody has to take you seriously in politics unless you can demonstrate that you have the power to deny them office. The only reason Kamala Harris is VP is because black voters stayed home in 2016. Detroit stayed home. Philadelphia stayed home. Atlanta stayed home. Democrats knew that they had to prop up their crumbling black support, so they embarked on this strategy of trying to push a gender divide between black women and black men. That's where Biden and the Democrats' phony praise of black women was coming from. But I've demonstrated to you time and again, they don't give a rip about black women. That was just them deciding to see if they could ego stroke black women to see if it would work. They knew that black men were walking away, so their only hope was, let's see if we can drive up the numbers of black women to turn out. We'll go ahead and tell them that black women are the backbone of the party, but don't expect us to give that backbone any support. They made a big deal out of Biden's promise to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. He made a black woman his UN ambassador, and what the hell has she been doing? And of course, he made a woman who claims to be partially black his VP. This was meant to con black women into turning out 100% for Biden. And the Democrats' political calculation was that if they could galvanize black women, then they were hoping that some of those black women would nag black men or otherwise wag their fingers at black men and say, we're going to the polls and you have to go too. Instead, we're seeing the opposite happen. Black men have turned their backs on the Democrats and black women are beginning to follow suit. Rather than fall for the con, black women are seeing through the con. But don't let anyone take credit for a Kamala defeat except for us.
I find it very interesting that we're trying to reach out to white men. We're trying to reach out to black men. The people whose rights are really on the ballot right now are women. And we're begging all these men to pay attention to us and to care enough about this election, to vote, to come out, to support us. I feel like Barack going on the campaign trail right now makes perfect sense. Of course, right? He's a top surrogate for Democrats. He should be out there doing the work right now. I think it's so amazing to me that with women's rights on the line, we're spending so much time focusing on making sure men care.
Because with this other issue I want to bring up is a problem too. Why are black men being lectured to? Why are black men being belittled in ways that no other voting group? Now, a lot of love for former President Obama, but for him to single out black men is wrong. And some of the black men that I have talked to have their reasons why they want to vote a different way. And even if some of us may not like that, we have to respect it. So unless President Barack Obama is going to go out and lecture every other group of men from other identity groups, my message for Democrats is don't bring it here to black men who, by and large, don't vote much differently from black women. So yes, is misogyny maybe a part of it? But again, is President Obama and is the Harris-Waltz campaign going to lecture other male groups in the same way that they're lecturing
This is not just about...
And you notice that when this Karen was sitting here complaining and griping, why are we sitting here talking about white men? No, we're talking about black men, but she threw in the white men part because she didn't want to have to say, why are we talking about black men? She was given just a straight white feminist line. This is what's been going on for 150 years, at least since abolition. This is where your Susan B. Anthony's and the rest of these white feminists originated with, which is, why are we talking about you black people? We should be talking about white people instead. Well, let me go ahead and answer this blonde Karen's question for her. Asking black men, we're asking men to care. I don't care. I do not care about your abortions at all. I am trying to see more black babies born, not less. I am trying to preserve black life, not snuff it out. As far as abortion goes, if the only thing you got to vote for is abortion, if that's the only thing that motivates you to get to the polls, then you ain't got much to justify you voting is what that means. But merely the fact that Nina Turner was simply giving the common sense facts and saying, well, black men have their reasons for not supporting Kamala Harris. That white woman was sitting there just making all kinds of faces, just staring daggers at her like, how dare you disagree with me? How dare you speak back? This is what's going on with the Democrats and always been going on. She's sitting here just looking at her like, how dare you? How dare you? This is supposed to be the party that we're supposed to be supporting. This is supposed to be the party that cares about black people. This is the party that we should put in power. How is this any different than the Republicans? How is this any different than what the Republicans do? Democrats are always talking about the Republicans. Oh, why they just bristle at the idea of black people voicing their concerns. Well, here you got Democrats doing the same doggone thing. See, there is no substitute for the black agenda, and it scares everyone because it represents leveling the playing field. It represents justice, and we live in a world that is not ruled by justice. It's ruled by anti-black racism. And just the fact that black people in general and black men in specific, because we are the leaders of our group, we represent the sharpest edge of that threat to white supremacy and white dominance. Just the fact that black people are simply speaking up for ourselves and black men are being told, hey, maybe what you're saying isn't so crazy, that makes them lose their minds. They're furious about that. When you start talking about black empowerment, things that actually threaten the system, when you simply say that, hey, maybe black men shouldn't be insulted, let's try that, then what happens is we get a political face peel. Everybody has to show their cards because you're striking at the core of the issue. And the reason that black men are the ones who are catching all this flack for this is because we represent the leadership group of the black community. It started with us. We've been the main ones driving it. So they have to point their daggers at us. They have to do that. This is the reason why you didn't have the Democrats sending out Donna Brazile or sending out any of their other black female mouthpieces. You never seen Simone Mamie Sanders whining at black women about their voting habits and saying black women ought to be doing this, black women ought to be doing that. They don't do anything for black women. They give some minor lip service. You got some bought and paid for shills who they themselves are saying, oh, we're going to be focusing specifically on black women. You can tell that came from some white Democrat dark money donors. They're like, okay, these black men are breaking bad on us. We need to start focusing on black women, try to see if we can make up for the gap with them instead. We're going to focus on getting more black women into elected office. And when they say black women in elected office, they don't mean black women in general. They mean specifically Kamala Harris and her sorority sisters. Some more of these black Greek sororities who ain't done a doggone thing for anyone but themselves. These boule butt kissers, that's who they're really talking about, because that's the only ones who they ever put into office. They put in more of these little wannabe secret society shills, and they're telling you that this is empowering black women. Do you see black women's position having changed in the society any? Seems to me they're not empowering black women at all, but they give lip service to it, and they want you to get jolly in the behind about it. And you see they're not scared of that. You want to terrify white supremacy, show them that the leaders of the black community are being empowered, and more importantly, they're going to be acting in their group's interests. That's what terrifies them. Empowered black men lead to empowered black families. Empowered black families lead to an empowered black community. That's how you crush white supremacy. You don't do it with girl power, because that's just a shady front for saying divestors. That's where that crap comes from. That's the well they're drawing from. You want to stand the black community back on its feet. Show them that the individuals whose job it is to protect the black community are getting the support that they need. More importantly, they're getting the empowerment that they require. That's what you do. This white woman would not be sitting here glaring if you had Nina Turner talking about, well, we need to have more black women having abortions. And we need to have, no, she heard black men, the leadership principle of the black community. She heard competition to her white privilege. That's what she heard. And that's why she was sitting there just staring daggers at Nina Turner, because she felt acutely threatened by what Nina Turner was doing. She ain't supposed to be doing that. She's supposed to be doing the sisterhood thing. She's supposed to be doing the, well, black men, they need to get in line. See, that appeals to white supremacy. That empowers white supremacy. That holds up white supremacy. You start talking and saying, wait a minute here. The leadership principle of the black community is supposed to be these men out here leading, and we're not going to be attacking our leaders. We're not doing that. That's showing black unity. That's showing black solidarity. That threatens white supremacy. It threatens white privilege. I mean, if looks could kill, Nina Turner wouldn't have made it out this segment alive the way that blonde woman's looking at her. If you want your group to get what it should from the political process, you have to make it known that people cannot win elections without you. Because if people figure they can win without you, why should they listen to you? You have Negroes, though, who are terrified of white disapproval. They're terrified of the white media blaming them for something. And in Nina Turner's case, to an extent, probably terrified that the Democrats are going to blame her because that means that they won't bankroll any campaigns for her in the future. They're terrified of the prospect that they're not going to get that white Democratic support. Well, family, you can't live your life in fear. You dang sure can't win if you're scared. When they say that black men are going to cost Democrats the election, you tell them, yes, we can and we will. You don't do what we say, you will pay. If Kamala Harris loses, it's going to be because black voters in general and black men in specific said no. And all that gaslighting about abortion, that's been blown out of the water. But look what CNN did with that panel. They had this blonde woman sitting here, and what's she doing? She's griping and complaining about abortion. That's what this tells you. They've been trying for the longest time to prop up that lie that apparently black people care so much about abortion, but when push came to shove, only ones talking about it are white women. This is proof that all the phony white media articles about Democrat shills claiming that abortion is the most important issue to black voters, it hasn't worked. And they know it hasn't worked. It's gotten so bad you got this Karen on screen screaming about it because the black shills are too scared to. Nina Turner gave it brief lip service in passing, but she didn't dare say, well, this is an issue that's going to get black voters to the polls. None of these shills are saying it now because push has come to shove. This is the white media being forced to admit the truth. They've been hiding in their network studios and limiting their black interviews to the dependable shills who rely on the white media for every crumb of their daily bread. They're terrified to talk to black voters, so they stick to the roly-polies and the bought and paid for bootlicks and shills, these mercenaries who work for these white dark money organizations like Black PAC, people who are literally auxiliaries of the DNC, and they put them in front of the cameras. But that hasn't worked. All of these Democratic county chair people that they talk to, and we're going to talk to this person over here, but this person over here works for some Democrat get out the vote effort. That's who they've been putting forward as being the black people they're talking to. And look where it's put them. We have remained steadfast and consistent. And what we've been saying here online has forced them to have to at least acknowledge it on air because it can no longer be ignored. And they tried for years. This is exactly the trajectory that I told you it would take. They start off by trying to see if they can ignore us out of existence. As the white media sees it, if they don't talk about you, you don't exist. So if they just don't say anything about us, why? We'll simply disappear soon and we'll be gone because you only exist if the white media says so. Except that didn't work. So now what they've been doing for years is they've been attacking our arguments, they've been attacking our platform, but they don't dare say us by name except for Tiffany Cross-Eyes. She went ahead and did that, but she confirmed what we've been saying. We're the ones that they're talking about. And Obama, he's talking about us. So ignoring us hasn't worked. Repeating a lie over and over again, hoping that it takes hold hasn't worked. Sending in the bootlicks and the rest of the clowns hasn't worked. So this is what they've been reduced to. You got Magic, Obama, and then Kamala talking about going on Charlemagne the Fraud's little sideshow. And you can bet that he'll just be mindlessly echoing the black men are misogynistic line too. You can bet on that. At some point, he's going to be propping that up and going, there is sexism there's sexism among black men. He won't point out any of the demands that black men are making because the entire point of a fraud like him is to ignore black demands. They're so petrified at even the prospect of having to talk about black demands, they don't dare to even denigrate or insult them. They just try to ignore them altogether, like cash reparations. That's just too dangerous to white power for them to even mention it. They can call it crazy and fringe and extremist in the beginning. But as the black grassroots have shown in California, if we force them to talk about black issues long enough, it goes from being extreme to mainstream. Because that's the true difference between what's considered extreme and what's considered mainstream, which issues are discussed regularly as a part of the political discourse. Everything is a fringe issue until people talk about it long enough. And that's why both parties have worked together to silence, censor, and ignore black people's demands, lying and claiming that it's not feasible, as Bernie Sanders said, or trying to hide behind polls. It's unpopular. And black people bought into it because we felt isolated and alone. Black people knew that we were right, but we also felt that we were alone, so we lacked the confidence to stand up. And this is the result. You get abused and you get insulted until you stand up for yourself. Now, for all the chumps, all the DNC shills and liars, plants, and cowards who have been spending the last few years telling us that Donald Trump don't do nothing but insult black people. Donald Trump don't do nothing but disrespect black people. You gonna vote for him? I noticed you fools have been real quiet the last few days. I noticed y'all been real quiet. Aren't you going to come along and tell us that Donald Trump does nothing but insult black people? Aren't you going to tell us that Democrats are the only ones who respect black voters? Aren't you going to do that now? Where are you at? Haven't seen you in a few days. Yeah, you're laying low. Just like these fools that you see on cable news. None of them would even dare to defend what Obama's doing. They can't even defend it. That's how you know you done stepped in it. I want to see you shills and you plants and you liars. Because you were hiding for most of the last 3 years. But of course, predictably, as soon as Biden announced that we're getting the old campaign engine ginned up again, then some of you fools started crawling out of the woodwork. But you didn't bring your usual talking points with you this time. Interesting. Because you were the main ones out here for years saying, y'all gots to vote. Y'all gots to vote. It's too dangerous not to vote. Y'all can't be sitting out. Ain't nobody gonna listen to you if you say that you're gonna sit out the election. Yeah, well, we said we're sitting out the election. What a surprise. Now everyone's listening. We've been telling you fools for years that our silence would speak far louder than us voting, and now you see the proof. They're going nuts, because what we're doing represents a seismic shift in the political landscape. So for all of you cowards and plants and shills, here's the reason why black folks with some intelligence, we're not scared of anything. We're not even scared of being ignored. America obsesses over black people. It fixates on attacking us. It fixates on hating us. They are absolutely fixated on persecuting us. There's no way in hell they would ignore us even if they wanted to, because they have to fixate on us in order to keep us oppressed. Black oppression happens to be the foundation of white supremacy. They can't afford to ignore us. Not to say that they like us, but it's a matter of if we're doing something, especially something that threatens them, they can't afford to look the other way. They have to keep us under complete and thorough control. So when we declare that the ballot box doesn't work, they're going to see that. They can't afford to ignore that. When black people act as a group, we cannot be ignored. When black people abandon the ballot box, historically revolts and revolutions are the result. This is the power of black people turning their backs on our crooked system. Everyone has noticed it, because we're the ones who everyone depends on to validate this fraud calling itself a democracy. When this racist country talks about how much progress it's made, the first thing they always point to is us. And they say, we see those niggers over there who we enslaved. Why? We say that those niggers can vote. And look at them. They're going to vote, and they're saying that, well, you know, the process works. We have the ability to actually influence it. So see, they're validating that the system works. But here we are going, nope, we got the vote. The ballot don't do no doggone good. Here we are telling the truth. Now, they're like, whoa, you weren't supposed to say that. See, if we start acting like an aggrieved minority, it creates a political problem for the dominant society. Obama's temper tantrum has made headlines around the world, but not the kind he wanted. Even the white media has been forced to address it. You don't get that from choosing the lesser of two evils. You only get that when a critical mass of black people does something that the power structure didn't count on us doing. For years now, we've been telling you that black voters are gravitating away from the Democrats. We also told you that black men, while the leading edge of this movement, we're not alone. Black women have also been walking away from the bull crap too. Now, some of you who spend way too much time watching white media and believing every word the white media says, you were telling us, well, it don't matter what black men do. Them Democrats ain't worried. Yeah, most of the people who use that line are Democrat shills. Not all of them, but most of them. We told you that the white media and the Democrats can try to put on a brave face, try to put up a brave front, but we have the pulse of the people. Black men are not going to scream and yell and holler or make a scene. We're men. We don't do that. When men have decided to turn their backs on you, you're not going to be hearing any arguing. All you'll hear is silence. And that's what it's been. And our silence has become deafening. And we told you that the younger black generation is who's driving this. And they have to admit that too. Black males under 50, which truth be told, if you're in your 40s, you're not really young per se. But you're not one of the boomers, is what they mean. Even though at least half of Generation X is now solidly in their 50s. But basically black men who are not elderly, that's who they're talking about. And among black women, certainly black women who are in their 30s or younger, they're not having a black male voter crisis. They're having a black generational voter crisis. The problem here is that all these black voters in their 30s and 40s who are making demands today, that's going to be your voters in their 50s and 60s doing it tomorrow. The boomers, who are only too eager to give Democrats a pass no matter how much they ignored us, they're dying out. The boomers are the reason the Obamas thought that they could talk to us any old kind of way, because they tolerated it. Well, there's at least two generations now, Gen X and the millennials, with Gen Z closely behind, who are not tolerating any disrespect. See, these white power structures, they're not used to that. When you let people abuse you, when you let people talk to you any old kind of way, they really get used to that. And soon the abuse gets a hell of a lot worse, to the point that they demand to abuse you. It's not a matter of, well, occasionally I let my tongue get a little bit loose with so-and-so. After a few moments, it becomes, you know, you only exist, so we have someone to degrade and dehumanize. And if you don't obey me, I got a problem with that. Oh, you say that you're going to actually act in your own interest? I got a problem with that. That's why Obama was saying that phrase, you know, I got a problem with that. Obama would never talk to any other group that way. White women are the ones who broke for Trump. Why doesn't he lecture them? Well, for the same reason Magic Johnson doesn't lecture them. And why are none of them lecturing white men? Kamala Harris is married to a white man, Douglas Emhoff. Why doesn't Dougie lecture his fellow white men about how they need to vote for his wife, and if they don't, they're racist or something? Why doesn't he do that with them? In fact, they don't lecture anyone else. Kamala Harris isn't lecturing Indian men about how they're not breaking for her. She wouldn't dare. They do it to us because the boomers allowed them to get comfortable with talking like this to us. Well, now we're pushing back. But understand something, these anti-black racists, they're not going to stop simply because we've pushed back once. Yes, they've been forced to acknowledge that we're speaking up for ourselves, but now what they're going to do is try to test us. You see, black people have a very bad habit of standing strong for only a few moments, and the enemy knows that. So they're going to keep on with the insults and the disrespect because they want to see whether this is one of those times when black people stick to our guns and show some persistence. That's what comes next, family. Don't expect them to roll over. You don't have a system this evil that stays entrenched for 500 years and then it crumbles in a single instant simply because you made one demand. They're going to try to see if they can hold out, try to test our resolve. Now, as far as Obama goes, he knows he's stepped in it because nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, is daring to say that this is the right message. None of them are. Instead, they're saying, well, if black men are offended, like Michael Steele's dumb behind, well, if black men are offended, they're being overly sensitive. But nobody's saying this is the right message. Tell black men how wrong they are. Call them a bunch of sexists. Nobody's saying that. Not a single one of these bought and paid for DNC shills dares to defend it. Instead, they at best try to retreat to the, well, some black men are sexist crap. But again, if you can't defend what Obama said, then you also can't deny that this stunt only serves to turn yet more black men away. And what they really hate is that the black grassroots have successfully taken Obama's words and applied them to the Democratic Party as a group. They keep trying to limit it to Obama, but we're not letting them. We're pointing out, hey, Obama's speaking for the entire Democratic Party with this. What he said is the same thing Democrats have been saying for decades now. This is what they've been doing for decades. This is why online, whenever black folks do Twitter spaces and podcasts like Brother Tariq does, you always have Democrat operatives who show up, and the very first thing they do is to lecture us and insult us. And when we tell them we have to talk about policy, they lie and claim, well, whatever it is you're talking about, Kamala's already done it. Kamala's already done it. Housing, Kamala's already done it. In that case, then why does she just post a doggone ad saying she knows that she ain't done nothing about it? Total lies. But as we found out during the BLM protest, Democrats sent out an internal memo telling all the DNC politicians and spokespeople that if they talk about anything with black people, do not promise to do anything. They said it themselves. Whatever you do, do not promise those black people anything. Barack Obama didn't misspeak. Or as some moron from the Times was saying on that CNN panel, it was a swing and a miss. No, Barack Obama's been lecturing and haranguing black men since before he was president. He's been swinging and missing for a long time. At no point in his lecture did Obama say a word about policy. That was deliberate. This is the Democratic Party platform. The number one rule of the Democrats is don't do anything for black people. They're making excuses for a Kamala defeat already. Whatever happened to all that bravado from the white media, all that hype for the last 3 months? Oh, she's just been rising in the polls, rising. Except we're looking at the numbers, she's been falling. We've been hearing about how she's only going up in the polls, right? All we've heard since the summer is that Kamala mania is sweeping the nation. And she's riding an invincible wave that's going to sweep her right into the Oval Office. And who are these black men who Kamala is having the most problems out of? Black men under the age of 50. Now, it's the roly-polies and others who say that young black people, they're just irrelevant. You need to stick to them older black voters. Well, your old heads are dying out. And when you're not able to get turnout from people in their 30s and 40s, that's not a young voter problem anymore. That's officially a middle-aged voter problem. All this hiding their heads in the sand ain't going to save them. But what else can the bootlicks say?
18. Now, here's the problem here. Obama lost 6 points. And so it's not misogyny if you had two men who are running. So what's going on here? And that is you have the Democrats, many of these Democratic white strategists have not crafted a black male specific strategy. What I mean by that is since the civil rights movement, African Americans less self-identify as Democrats. So the younger you go, so 55 plus, more self-identified. The younger you go, less self-identified, which means Democrats have to work harder, spend more resources, communicate with voters today, because they're also choosing the couch.
Roly-poly throwing in his 2 cents, that's always good for a laugh. Predictably, he's griping at the Democrats because of who they've got consulting for them. That seems to be his main grievance with them. Whenever you hear him talking about Democrats need to spend more money to reach black male voters, what he really means is they need to spend money with him. That's what he's doing. He's trying to give an advertisement for himself. That stuff about white Democratic strategists, that's him auditioning for a DNC contract. Just keep in mind, the problem Kamala and the Democrats have is black voters under the age of 50. Now, roly-poly was the main one who a few years back was saying to forget about younger black voters because they don't matter. You got to focus on those older black voters. That's what he was saying. Never mind the fact that the only reason Obama had such dominant numbers for both of his election wins was because young black voters turned out for him in unprecedented numbers. Young black voters were engaged with Obama, and that changed everything. And Democrats have been trying to reach that high ever since. That's why they've been complaining that ever since 2013, the numbers, especially with black voters, have been trending down, down, down. That ain't the old black voters who are bowing out of the process. It's the young ones, the ones who actually turned out in 2008 and 2012, the ones who roly-poly said were irrelevant. You ain't got to worry about them. Worry about them old folks. Yeah, well, the Democrats already get almost 100% elderly black support. What else do the elderly have to do on election day except for turn out to vote? That's all they got to do. It's the young people that they've been lacking. And roly-poly was fine with that. But now the young black men are in the news as a demographic that the Democrats are struggling to reach. Roly thinks he sees an opportunity to shamelessly plug his own incompetent consulting services. This is the very clown who is part of the reason Democrats have lost young black support. Because they listen to idiots like Roland Martin, who said to ignore young black voters. Now he says Democrats don't know how to reach them. Yeah, because they've been listening to fools like Roland Martin who have been telling them what they want to hear, but not telling them what they need to hear. So you got Obama out here campaigning for Kamala Harris, and the only thing roly-poly's campaigning for is a job. He's still desperately hoping that he can get a consulting gig with the DNC, or somebody. As long as somebody gives him a check, he'll go work for the Republicans if they're paying. He's still pushing that boulder up that hill. He's whining that the Democrats have white consultants who don't have the pulse of the black vote. Well, roly-poly is a product of these pathetic black Greek frats and sororities just like Kamala Harris. And they've been the main suck-ups telling the Democrats that they can do no wrong and that they got the black vote corralled. They lead us around by the nose. How's that working out for you, Roly? Roly-poly is part of why the Democrats are so willfully dismissive of black people's concerns, because they've had worthless shills like him who they put on camera, totally ignoring black people's real interests and grievances and cheerleading for the Democrats no matter what. Oh, and by the way, you notice how he was name-dropping bought and paid for Democrat front groups like Black PAC? Now, I've told you about Black PAC. You can see my complete breakdown on them in the archives of this YouTube channel. Black PAC is nothing more than a clumsy front for white Democrat dark money donors. You got these white Democrat donors who pay a front black woman to stand out front and be their mascot. And they use black as nothing more than a branding term. So for him, roly-poly to point to a known Democrat front group as proof that Democrats are getting black support is a joke. But then again, what else would you expect from a clown? Now notice how these black bootlicks aren't out here talking about respect anymore. I haven't heard that word from them all week. All these black bootlicks, and since Obama's been out here on his lecture tour, the bootlicks haven't been sticking up for him on the grounds that Democrats respect black voters. They're not just angry at black voters, they're scared. They know what the trend has been for over a decade now. I've been telling you for the longest time that black voters have been trending away from the Democrats, and they know it. The white media didn't really want to mention that it started with the Obama administration. It started with his second term before he was even out of office. It started back in 2013. No sooner than he got reelected, that's when black voters looked and said, you know what, we're starting to get the impression that we're not going to get anything from this clown. It didn't start after Obama left office. It started while he was still in the White House. About the only Democrat who actually dared to admit that is James Carville. I guess because of his senility kicking in his old age, his filter broke for him. He wasn't supposed to actually say that, but here we are on this issue. And suddenly CNN remembered where they misplaced their historical voting data now. Yeah, what a surprise. Since 2012, the percentage of black people voting Democrat has only gone down. As we've shown the persistence and spread the word, what we've said online has made its way into the white media bloodstream. Now, our mission is not to try to control what the white media says. That's a fool's errand. My point is that no matter how much they try to pretend like they don't see us or hear us, they do. When you hear people in the white media whining about people online, these people online, you listen to folks online, they're complaining about us. In a social media environment where traditional media outlets are losing viewers and subscribers, they're not about to signal boost the people who are dismantling them. That's why they're not mentioning us by name. Tiffany Cross did that, but you know she only did it once. Because they got on her butt and told you better not do that anymore. So Kamala's going to go back on Charlemagne the Fraud's little sideshow. Gee, how much good has that done her so far? Her strategy of sticking to media safe spaces, it's a coward strategy. She's just preaching to the choir, but that choir is getting smaller by the day. Gee, I can't believe that her sorority sisters haven't been able to bail her out on this one. See, Kamala Harris stinks in interviews. She trips over her own forked tongue and gets caught up in lies constantly. She knows the breakfast schlubs aren't going to put her on the spot, and that's the entire point. Hell, for all we know, Charlemagne the Fraud's already been slipped the questions, but even without that, he knows not to put her on the spot. He knows not to embarrass her. Well, when you're facing voter backlash and you're losing support, that's not the time to hide amongst the suck-ups and shills. Sooner or later, you got to go out there and show you can face the music. That's the only way to turn it around. You need to be able to go to those hostile voters and start winning them over. But Kamala Harris can't because she's never had to do that, and she has no intention of doing it. I've been saying it since 2017 when I posted my now classic video, The Deadly Deception of Kamala Harris. She is a product of the California political machine. She can't debate because she's never had to. She can't campaign either because she's never had to. She can't make the case for her candidacy because she's never had to. All she had to do was make pillow talk with Willie Brown and then sit back while the California political machine gave her an elevator ride to the top. But the elevator seems to have run into some problems because the black media threw a wrench into the works. So now this is what she's been reduced to. Sending out shills and an irrelevant ex-president who people are trying to claim has influence that obviously he now is revealed not to have. Barack Obama never was that influential, but of course if you get all of your news from the white media, you'll be the last one to know that. The black media's been telling you that black folks haven't been with this guy for years. And as always, we're the canary in the coal mine. We're always ahead of the curve because we have to be. But the people who are sticking up for Barack Obama, they're trying to talk about him as if he still is Mr. Silver Tongue. No, he's a professional BS artist. Now, at long last, a sufficient number of black people have finally had enough of his BS and enough of him. And all the liars, shills, plants, suck-ups, and professional butt-kissers have been exposed for the liars and frauds that they are. These people have nowhere to hide. And sure, you can have the white media trying to claim that Barack Obama, he was giving black men a blunt message. That's their way of trying to whitewash the fact that he made a mistake. That's what they're trying to say. They're trying to keep from having to use the M word. Oh, he really screwed up. So, well, he was delivering a blunt message as opposed to it was a dumb one. Wow, he screwed up. But then again, Obama's mistake is the same mistake that Kamala Harris made. Thinking that they were going to find some way to circumvent the black vote. You don't do that. This country owes a debt to us, and no amount of tethers or white media mouthpieces are going to be able to talk their way out of this one. This bill is due, and we're not accepting any IOUs this time. And as far as Barack Obama running his mouth goes, he's already dug a hole for Kamala Harris's campaign, one that she's not going to be able to get out of. And even if by some unholy miracle she manages to slither her way into the White House, that still doesn't help them because the political trend is going in the wrong direction. And what's happening is black people are making it very clear this is not about one election cycle or about one presidential campaign or even about one nondescript tether candidate. This is about black people and what we are owed and what we are going to get. And the very first thing that we're going to be getting is respect. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Tomorrow Boyd, BC, Onan X, Black Voltron Reloaded, and Gregory Franklin. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.